happiness is not outside of the person, that it's something that you're supposed to have with matter of fact, it was intended for it to be inherent. I think what's happened is that it was lost, as a, like, I'm saved. So from a biblical standpoint, to me, it's as a result of like the fall, transgression of man, we were, the things that were inherently within us, we were like segregated from. So as a result, now we're like forced to deal with purely the material. So like if you're someone who's so achievement, what is there really for man to do under the sun? We bring up Solomon. It's like, Solomon was this biblical figure, whether you believe he existed or not, but there's still virtue and truth in the story. So all the people are like, well, I don't believe that. It's like, well, that's cool. There's still narratives, stories are incredibly profound, but basically I'm surmising this, but he set out and his whole plan was, let me figure out what there is to do underneath the sun. Basically, what is there for man to do while he has this this short time on earth? Like, what is there that is fulfilling, that actually brings genuine satisfaction and meaning in life? And he had all of the financial resource, all of the power and control to exercise whatever it is that his mind could conjure and do. So he goes out, builds like agricultural landscapes, builds statues, builds just goes on a total like developmental like I guess building spree, right?
And did everything.
Wrote
books. Like, he did a lot in his lifetime. He amassed so many different things. He was knowledgeable. We all know about what his house looked like, because when the Queen of Sheba came from Ethiopia, she was impressed, and she was extremely wealthy herself, but she was just impressed with his dinner table, because he had like gold on it and stuff. It was impressive.
Yeah, he went in. Concubines, do any of those?
He had way too many.
Like 1,000?
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah,
that's what took him away from God, but we'll get to that too.
Yeah, because of the all of the gods and things of that nature that they had, which is interesting, because what that really reads to me is that they had different ideologies.
Yeah, they all did. They were referred to as foreign women.
Yeah, but he was doing this sort of like, let's be inclusive of everything. That's how I can bridge barriers and sort of that sort of thing. But that's another topic. But he long story short, he goes out and he does every possible thing conceivable that a man can do. An arborist, like I said again, he was a constructionalist. He was an academic person. He had wisdom as well. And I think that's interesting but if you look at the difference between him and his father, his dad had like experiential knowledge as well as like he walked with God.
Yeah.
So, and he didn't start in the palace, like he
was a shepherd boy.
from the trenches too. So I think he was a little bit more grounded in terms of like he was in the slums. He knew the people, and he was a warrior.
And he had to fight.
He had to fight
for what he got.
And it took him 15 years before he even got to the throne. So it wasn't like, so he had purpose. He was anointed to be king as a kid, but then it wasn't like he immediately saw the throne. He's literally running away from Saul for 15 years.
Right.
Like he's hiding in caves, and then he even has an opportunity to whack his, the person Saul who's trying to kill him, and he doesn't do it. And he patiently goes through suffering for 15 years. So you contrast him with his, and then at the very storm, can you genuinely still be optimistic and have fulfillment and peace while you're going through something that is actually painful? And I think, yes, I would say though that doesn't mean, because I think what a lot of Christians do that is wrong is like we extend or we inflate faith in the sense that means like we don't feel like things that are,
or we shouldn't.
Like we shouldn't.
Yeah.
So like you're going through something, it's like, well, okay, the word does, it's like you look at God in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's experiencing stress,
right,
like to such an a potent degree that he is sweating blood. I don't even know how that's physically possible.
Yeah.
But he's stressed to that degree, but we see what he does in order to conquer that. So I think in terms of tools, like even with David, for example, as well, he had tools to help him navigate through that. Like even when he himself committed atrocities and egregious acts and fell short of glory, we still see how he responded in that.
Yeah.
You see how Jesus himself communed with the Father to make it through a very stressful point in time, and this is before he even went to the cross. So again, like contrasting David and Solomon is like Solomon asks for wisdom because he recognizes like his deficit in like experiential knowledge and wisdom for real. Even though he was very smart and he was a thorough kid, he wasn't really on that same kilter as his dad, and I think he recognized that. Hence, like, I need wisdom, and gets it. Quality of life is quality of life outside of you as well. Like, is that because people say, oh, like when your bag increases, the quality of your life increases. What do they mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a subtle little like finesse in wording that's media uses very, I think, covertly as well. So then we're saying, because what that means is like, well, if your bag ain't up, then the quality of your life is trash, right? So what do you think about that?
I do think that that's a sneaky
little finesse.
Yeah, in the way that it gets used. In the most basic way, that's true. Like, let's say, for instance, you living with rats and stuff, but then you get all this money and suddenly you're able to move into a mansion. In that sense, the quality of, I guess, what you have and what you possess, not your life. It's the quality of what you have, the quality of your living space, maybe your vehicle, like those things. Yeah, that changes. But I think the trick that they do is they say the quality of your life, and material things do not equal life. Right. That's the difference.
Big point.
Like, life in and of itself, you'll have life in you whether you have $5 million or you don't have 2 pennies to rub together.
For sure.
You're going to have life in you. It may not be the best if you don't have 2 pennies to rub together because you won't have certain resources. But the life that is within you, it's a divine nature, so it's not lacking. Externally, it might be lacking, but there's stuff in us. And I think we'll come back to that because we touched on that too.
Yeah. Does your life have value? Is your life one of quality only when you have external things to like attached to you? Is that when you have quality, or do you have quality just being like human? And expand that even to value as well. Does your value rise because now you have traversed the social or I guess the social hierarchy where your status has increased as a result of like either your job or who you're married to or whatever? So is value and quality inherent apart from like social like status? That's a question. And then how you answer that is really going to determine a lot of things. Because if it's yes, then you ain't ish right now, right? And media and who says is a good question as well. Like, who says? Who is the chief authority in proving? Now, like how we spoke about before, media is an agent that works to promote a narrative that causes us to be in pursuit of things as if they're outside of us. And then it's like the apprehension of your self-esteem and worth. It's like if that's outside of you, then they have connected worth and value to an object. Now this is like the fallacy for me in that whole thing, is because there are people like, what was her name again?
Chesley.
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 Like Chesley, who have achieved a lot of things that a lot of us millennials and then people even older than her haven't even come close to achieving yet. But yet it didn't lend to satisfaction. Now, you know, there's some medical experts and psychologists that will say, well, that's, you know, probably a chemical sort of imbalance that she had that maybe lent to like a higher tilt to depression.
And actually, let me touch on that.
Go ahead.
Because there's differences between the two. There are types of depression.
Right.
There's chemical depression, yes, where there is a chemical imbalance, but then there is situational / circumstantial depression, in which, like, you know, you lose a job and you become depressed. That is circumstantial and situational. I can't speak personally to her situation, but my opinion is that it was not chemical. I feel that it was circumstantial and situational, and not that she had bad per se, or what we would think of as bad circumstances, but, you know, how her perspective and how she was seeing and experiencing things were not good for her.
For sure. Yeah, that's a big point. I think like the finesse in the trap is that, hey, if you pursue something worthwhile, pursue something that has meaning, this is a thing though, it's like something outside of you can't give you like meaning in the sense of like something material, something created. Even people can't do that for you. You know, if like someone is a source of your happiness, you're only as good as like they're constantly, you know, themselves in the way that you met them, that provided you that sort of like emotional feel. So like once they slide, then you're a wreck, or you're nobody then. So it's like that, who wants to live like that? That's not a sort of like, that's not a regular, you know, a regulated sort of standardized way of living. You're at the effect of everything else. And you'll always be in a sort of chase. And then I just personally believe that human beings that have life can't find satisfaction and wholeness or value in things that don't inherently have life in and of themselves.
I agree.
Like a job don't have life.
Nope.
So it can't provide life for you, no matter how meaningful it is, because you got people who start that business, and once it's like $100 million business, they're depressed. So then it's like, I need to go do another. I need to go start another business, maybe 2 businesses. And then before you know it, you've done this laundry list. You have this laundry list of accolades, and the whole world immortalizes you. You become the new Jesus. But then it's like you personally are not satisfied. And then you're wondering if there's like something wrong with you. That's like really what happens, because it's like, well, these are things that not only has society said is valuable, but like they're the only things under the sun. Like what else is there that you can really do apart from maybe like really ultimately what can a human being do on earth besides have like relationships, work, and like, you know, just like extra like fun activity, you know what I'm saying? Like what else is there really that you can do for like, you know what I'm saying? As far as what we can do is really not that much. I mean, there's a slew of different activities. There's a slew of different people that you can meet. So the confluence of all of these things, almost, it's like, so there's an assumption like, hey, maybe it's out there somewhere, I just gotta find it. So you're looking for the right kind of job, or you're looking for like the right kind of person, and or you know, the right kind of activity. But it's like none of these things, not even people, other people have life in and of themselves, but if you are projecting, or if the person is the embodiment of happiness for you, that's still a L. Because what happens when they die?
It's dangerous.
When they die, you are a
They don't
wreck.
even have to die. They could literally just move across the country
or cheat on you,
never speak to you again.
Never speak. Yeah.
Oof.
Then that's tough, and you see that, and people have a grief and a pain as a result of that. I also too, because when we spoke earlier, it's like, is it impossible to go through something that is painful? Is it impossible to, like, let's say, you know, you're in a circumstance, in a situation that is like rife with suffering, like it's painful. It's, you know, if you could be out of it tomorrow, you would snap your fingers and you'd be out of it. But like, is it impossible, like for example, somebody who might be depressed or unfulfilled or not happy or hopeless, like, is that curative or is it purely manageable? And I think that's like important.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I actually think that it is something that can be manageable. And here's why I'm gonna say not curative and manageable. Because if you're saying that, you know, those things can be cured, then that means that while the person is in the midst of that, it can be taken away, right? Which is true. It can be, you know, depends on certain things. But I'm thinking about it more of a place of manageability, and I don't mean that in the like, oh, I'll manage kind of way. That's not what I mean. What I mean is when we go through things, or life storms and such, and I guess this is more so speaking to Christians, the reason why God has given us certain tools in the first place is because he designed us in a way where we cannot live without him. We can, but he doesn't desire that. So going through a storm would suck, going through it without him, because there are things in storms that supersede our ability constantly. There are certain things that will overwhelm you. You know, we look to Jesus as our example, and we talked about Gethsemane, where Jesus was having a very human experience because he knew he was about to go to this cross, and he asked, is there any other way, right? He was sweating blood. He was experiencing, I mean, I don't even know. I feel like the adjectives I'm going to use are light, anxiety, grief, despair, all of it, you name it. But the comma in that is he prayed. And prayer is actually a tool.
Yeah.
So he was going through something. So if we want to talk about manageability, that's how he managed, by leaning on the Father in that moment. Even though it was painful, he managed by praying to his Father. And even though his initial question, you know, was out of pain, it was like, oh my God, is there any other way? You know, he realized, he was like, no, well, this has to happen, and it's not my will, it's your will. That's what he said. Not mine, but yours. And he just yielded.
Yeah.
So I think that God does give us, you know, ways to manage, to get through things. And it's not just prayer. I mean, it's because I don't want to make it seem like, you know, spiritual means are the only way to get through something. I'll say that spiritual means and other things. So it could be, you know, it could be prayer. It could be, you know, your church community, but it could also be, in addition to that, therapy if you need it. There's nothing wrong with that. It could be support from your family and your friends. Like, all of those things come together to help you manage getting through a rough spot.
For sure. I agree.